This presentation from the Notebook on Life applies Christian principles to daily living. From our engineering model of life, we're going to look at one of the controls. The area of experience includes how to keep your panic button under control. The objective of controlling your panic button is to help build trust in God's Word and the Christian walk. Last time we talked about the irrational thinking of fear. What do we know about fear? Proverbs 22:13 tells us that fear is that roaring lion in the street. Fear of meeting the lion is worse than seeing the lion. When we talk about fear, it is mostly from a negative point of view. Is there good fear? Yes. Proverbs 1:7 says that fear of the Lord is the beginning of knowledge. In the case of fearing the Lord, it is a positive action. It motivates us to follow God's command. Fear in Proverbs 1:7 is sometimes translated as reverence. If we show reverence or deep respect, we would act in a way that would be pleasing to the one we respect. I believe that the word reverence and respect are not strong enough when it comes to God. It should be more standing in awe, to worship. Matthew 10:28 tells us, "Don't be afraid of those who can kill only the body, but cannot touch your soul. Fear only God, who can destroy both soul and body in hell." Hebrews 10:31 says, "It's a fearful thing to fall into the hands of the living God." To fear God is a positive thing. We saw how God taught the Israelites to trust Him in every event, and we asked the question, are we not just like them? James 1, verses 2 and 3 reminds us of our learning curve. James 1, 2 through 4 asked the question and told us what to do. It says, "If your life is full of difficulty and temptations, then be happy. For when the way is rough, your patience has a chance to grow. Don't try and squirm out of your problem. When facing a difficult time, these words are hard to follow. What will it take before we learn to trust Him? We need to make a life notebook and record the events in our life. Then when faced with pushing our panic button, we can look back and see how God provided in the past and trust Him to provide in the future. Today we'll look at the steps of overcoming fear and dealing with the anger that is a result of fear. The key to overcoming fear begins with that firm conviction that God is in control of all events and that God's Word is true. The Christian must have complete trust in God's Word or else live with their worries and fears. What are the first steps in overcoming worry and fear? Step 1. Reject or stop their irrational thought process through prayer. Philippians 4, 6 and 7 says, "Don't worry about anything. Instead, pray about everything, and don't forget to thank Him for the answer." Step 2. Unload your worries on God by telling Him about your fears. 1 Peter 5:7 says, "Let Him have all your worries and cares, for He is always thinking about you and watching everything that concerns you." Step 3. Focus on the truth. Isaiah 26:3 says, "He will keep you in perfect peace, all those who trust Him, whose thoughts turn often to the Lord." If you focus on the things of earth, you may make it to 80 or 90. If you focus on the life to come, it will be for an eternity. Step 4. Think rationally, not irrationally. Matthew 6:27 asks the question, "Will all your worry add a single moment to your life?" No. Worrying about tomorrow can only deplete your strength for today. Step 5. Seek after God's direction. Matthew 6:33 says, "Give God first place in your life." Step 6. So don't be anxious about tomorrow. God will take care of your tomorrows when you put your trust in Him. Matthew 6:34. What happens when worry and fear comes back? Step 1. Admit the reality of fear. David said in Psalms 56:3 and 4, "But when I am afraid, I will put my confidence in you. Yes, I will trust the promises of God, and since I am trusting Him, what can mere man do to me?" The aggressive behavior may not feel the fear of failure. They may have fear of not getting their way. Those who feel strong in themselves and count on their own resources feel that they do not need God's help. You have heard the phrase, "God helps those who help themselves." That's not true. Fear makes one feel weak, helpless. Cry out to God and give Him your fears. It is God who helps the weak and makes them strong. Step 2. Admit your weakness and depend on God. 2 Corinthians 2:20 says, "When I am weak, then I am strong. The less I have, the more I depend on Him." Faith in God is a deliberate act of the will. It's a choice. Fear is the act of feeling. If you act on feelings that is caused by fear, then you get irrational action. Feelings cause impulse action. The aggressive behavior is a ready, shoot, aim behavior. They think after they take action. They draw the bullseye around where the bullet hits. Then they tell you that that's where they were aiming for. On the other hand, when you think first, you will act appropriately. The emotional feelings do not drive your action. When you see God in charge of everything, fear gets smaller and less paralyzing, as God gets bigger in your mind and heart. Until you deal with your fear, you'll find that the flower of fear is anger, and anger is only one letter away from danger. The aggressive person will display their anger through outward action, whereas the conflict avoidance person will internalize it and hold a grudge. While you're learning to overcome fear, the action of anger must be controlled. How do we deal with the emotion of anger? The first step is verbalizing the angry emotion to God. In Psalms 142, verses 1 and 3, we read, "How I plead with God, how I implore His mercy, pour out my troubles before Him. For I am overwhelmed and desperate, and you alone know which way I ought to turn to miss the traps that the enemies have set for me." Step 2. Stop and remember what God has said. In Psalms 37:8, it says, "Stop your anger. Don't fret and worry. It only leads to harm." Try memorizing all of the verses in Proverbs that address anger, and then review them when you feel the emotion of anger coming on. By the time you get through the list, you should have gained control of your emotions. Let's look at what Proverbs says about handling anger. Stop and remember. Proverbs 10:14. "A wise man holds his tongue. Only a fool blots out everything he knows. That only leads to sorrow and trouble." Proverbs 10:19. "Don't talk so much. You keep putting your foot in your mouth. Be sensible and turn off the flow." Proverbs 11:12. "To quarrel with a neighbor is foolish. A man with good sense holds his tongue." Proverbs 13:3. "Self-control means controlling the tongue. A quick retort can ruin everything." Proverbs 14:29. "A wise man controls his temper. He knows that anger causes mistakes." Proverbs 15:28. "A good man thinks before he speaks. The evil man pours out the evil words without a thought." Proverbs 18:6 and 7. A fool gets into constant fights. His mouth is his undoing. His words endanger him. Proverbs 19:11. A wise man restrains his anger and overlooks insults. This is to his credit. Proverbs 21:23. Keep your mouth closed and you stay out of trouble. Proverbs 22:24 and 25. Keep away from angry, short-tempered men, lest you learn to be like them and endanger your soul. Proverbs 29:11. A rebel shouts in anger. A wise man holds his temper in and cools it. How do you overcome the emotion of anger? The third step is to trust God and not take revenge. Romans 12:17 and 18 says, Never pay back evil for evil. Do things in such a way that everyone can see you are honest clear through. Don't quarrel with anyone. Be at peace with everyone, just as much as possible. And Romans 12:21 adds, Don't let evil get the upper hand, but conquer evil by doing good. Step 4 is to allow God to take action, as found in 1 Peter 2:18-23. Never answer back when insulted. Do not threaten to get even. Leave it in God's hands, who always judges fairly. Next time, we'll look at detecting the signs of fear and anger long before your panic button gets pushed.